An honor and a privilege to be joined by President Barker today. President Barker, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. Hope you're staying warm out there.
I'm staying warm, and I'm very grateful for the chance to visit with you. Thank you, mate.
Yes, so we'll just talk a little bit. So you grew up in Kingsport, Tennessee. First question is, how did you not end up going to Big Orange Country in Knoxville?
Well, the truth is, most of my classmates were going that way, and but I was interested in studying architecture, and University of Tennessee had just that year started a program, and I didn't have any real confidence in such a new program. So, and I had quite a few contacts with Clemson, so that was why I chose to come to Clemson. There were an awful lot of people in Kingsport who went to Clemson, a lot of scientists and engineers that worked at Tennessee Eastman Company. That was a big industry. So it was a pretty well-worn path across the mountain between Kingsport and Clemson.
Right, yes, sir. And so you were a student athlete at Clemson. You ran track and field, or was pole vaulter. So talk a little bit about your days as a track and field athlete at Clemson.
Well, I was an extremely average athlete here. I did have a partial scholarship as a pole vaulter, and it was a challenge balancing my architecture curriculum and the time that it took to do that with being a pole vaulter and keeping up with that responsibility too. But it was something I really enjoyed doing, and it was a nice balance to the sort of physical activity versus mental activity. And I thoroughly enjoyed being a student athlete at Clemson, and I still have my letter jacket, and I'm very proud of that. And I was surrounded by an awful lot of very good athletes at the time, both in people I lived with and people in my fraternity that were basketball and football players. So I was small potatoes compared to them.
Right, yes, sir. And talk a little about you were in the how did you get into the architecture field?
Well, I remember liking the way the word sounded. When I was younger, I always had to have a good answer to the question, "What do you want to be when you grew up?" And when I was in high school, I took a drafting class just to do something different, and as far as the curriculum was concerned, and I enjoyed that very much, and I wondered what you could do with that. Somebody said, "Well, that's what architects do." And I said, "Gracious, that sounds interesting." So I liked the way the word sounded, and the more I learned about it, the more I became attracted to the idea of using both your skill set as an engineer and an artist at the same time. So I found that very, very attractive, and mix in some pole vaulting into all that, and that was a great Clemson experience for me.
Right, now you were at Clemson from, I think it was 1965 to 1970, and then you went on and talk about how you decided to pursue your master's at Washington University in St. Louis, and then just talk about those years when you ended up at Tennessee and Mississippi State. Talk about the influence of that on you.
You've done a lot of good reading about my curriculum, my curriculum vitae, but thanks for doing that. Well, during my fifth year, I was in a 5-year program. It was a legitimate 5-year program. It wasn't
yes, sir.
A 4-year stretch to 5. It was actually 5-year curriculum. And during that last year, Marcia and I, we've been dating ever since we were in high school. We decided to get married, and so we lived in married student housing here during that last year. And during that final year, I was invited to be on a student review in which, as a student, you got to review other students' work. I mean, like second-year student work. And I came home that day back to our apartment and said to Marcia, I want to be a faculty member when I grow up. And so she said, "Well, that'll be great. I'm going to be a teacher, and so we'll have summers off, and it'll be terrific." Of course, we never had summers off. We always were doing other responsibilities. But so I decided to go to graduate school because I wanted to have the credentials to be a faculty member, and decided on Washington University, partly because it was very different than Clemson. It was an urban school, very different approach to architecture. So I studied urban design or urban planning in graduate school, and was invited out of graduate school to become a faculty member at the University of Tennessee, which I decided to do. And then after 1 year, an opportunity came to start a new school of architecture in the state of Mississippi, which has never had a school in that state before. And that was a chance as a designer to design a whole new school and be a part of it. And that was just too good to pass up. So we stayed there 12 years before coming back to Clemson.
Right. You talk a little bit about Tennessee and Mississippi State. And then in 1986, I believe, you returned to Clemson. What did it mean to you to come back to your alma mater where you had studied after going away to three other schools, I suppose? What did it mean to come back to Clemson? I guess a homecoming of sorts. Can you explain what that meant and what drew you back to Clemson University?
Well, it was home. I was very happy where I was, and I thoroughly enjoyed and really planned to stay there, and was actually dean at the time. And but I didn't realize how much I'd missed it until I came back and interviewed for the position, and it was just a powerful attraction. It's hard to put that attraction into words, but for me, it meant coming home, and it meant the same for Marcia, since we spent our first year of married life on this campus. And by that time, we had our two sons, and they were part of that decision too, and they were eager to follow the Tigers and become a part of the Clemson family. Again, for us, it was a very special thing. So for me, it was a matter of making a full circle and bringing what I had learned in these other places back to Clemson and trying to help build the architecture school into something even stronger than it was at the time.
Right, yes, sir. And talk a little bit about, we're trying to get his microphone and all adjusted so he doesn't have to sit there and hold it. The president of the school's got to hold the little microphone in the radio station. But we talk a little bit, you came back to Clemson 1986, and then you were, dean of architecture school. What did you like most about serving as dean of art, and then you moved into president. So just kind of compare, obviously taking the presidential job in 1999. Just talk about, the moving into that, the transition into that.
Well, I spent 13 years as dean, and about the middle of that, the university reorganized the colleges, and so I had a much larger responsibility and responsible for all the arts and all the humanities as well as the architecture school, and that was quite a challenge. It got about 3 times as large, the college did, and my responsibilities were much broader, and I had to put myself through school again, learning about the humanities, and if I was going to serve as their dean, I needed to know a whole lot more than I did at the time. So I spent a great deal of effort doing that, understanding how the 3 of those disciplines could work together, and there wasn't another college in the country structured that way, so it was quite a chance to design something new again, a little bit like the Mississippi State experience. You get to create a whole new college. And for a designer, that's just a great opportunity. And after 13 years, the position of president became open, and I had no real desire to be or ambition to be president of Clemson University. I really was very happy with what I was doing, but I don't know. I think the opportunity to serve was so compelling, and the idea of being able to represent Clemson and the Clemson family was so compelling that I decided on a Friday to apply, and I interviewed on Monday and was named president that Monday.
So it turned out to be a pretty good weekend that weekend.
Not an very unusual weekend, and Marcia was interviewed as well at the same time, and I think the board decided that they wanted her, and the only way they could get her was to pick me. And I think that's probably the way it worked out for 14 years as president. But for that opportunity, I'll always be grateful. But that's sort of how those steps were taken. It was not a plan. I never had the ambition or the dream to do that. If I had done it, I probably would have gotten a PhD, which is normally a credential for serving as president of a university. But the terminal discipline, the terminal degree in my discipline was the degree I had. So the board overlooked that handicap and saw the other assets that Marcia brought, and I was named president in 1999.
Right. Well, let's get on to some of the numbers here because they're just unbelievable. You were the 14th president at Clemson, served 14 years, 1999, just retired recently in end of December, early January. 932,000 degrees awarded. That's 35% of all degrees in Clemson history. I mean, when you think about something, 43% of living alumni have their degrees from you. I mean, just unbelievable. $863 million raised. Just talk about that a little bit. I mean, you know, I know you're really humble, but I mean, that's pretty staggering. Just unbelievable what you did here.
Well, the thing I guess I mean, I'm proud of a lot of things about Clemson, and the fact that those almost 60,000 degrees, each one of those is an individual person. Each one had an individual journey, 60,000 individual journeys that that I was a small part of, and I got to shake each one of those people's hands, and through that handshake, got to thank them for what they had contributed to Clemson, and also to recognize those individual journeys that had led them to that graduation. And for that, I really I have to stop and think about what that all means, and it's just now really sort of sinking in terms of what that impact is. But I guess if you're there for 14 years, you ought to do something. You ought to have achieved something during that time.
You did plenty, yes, sir.
But the fundraising part became even more important as state support it became less and less a part of our budget. It declined to about 9% of our budget overall. So private giving became an important part of keeping the quality of Clemson high, and giving students like you all the opportunity to do what you're able to do, to buy all this fancy equipment in this in this studio, to have all the opportunities that you have. Now, I became an important part of it, and I enjoyed, because I believed in Clemson and working with the very generous Clemson alumni and friends of the university who made those kind of numbers quite as staggering as they are. And we're well on our way to raising $1 billion in this capital campaign. We've just passed $750 million. And Jim Clements, I'm confident with the team that he has, will be successful in reaching that $1 billion goal. So Clemson is moving forward, and I'm very excited about what holds for the future.
Well, a lot was made about your vision to make Clemson a top 20 public university in the United States. What can you say about the success of that campaign? Here are some numbers. Clemson was named the #1 happiest students to town relationship, has given lots of national awards and national recognitions for student happiness and its reputation for intramurals and academics. What can you say about some of the awards Clemson has been given since you took over?
Well, I think the idea of assigning any of that to me is just not accurate, because you can't do that by yourself. And I think early on, when I believed in Clemson, and I believed that we were a better university than we were being recognized for. And I thought that if we focused our efforts, our national reputation could increase, and we could become an even stronger university. And at my degree and the degrees that we were awarding before that and after that would have more meaning and have more significance. So we set about doing that, and it became a major team effort to make that happen, athletics and academics working together. And every step we took, getting better in athletics, we got better in academics, and each step led to the next one. And so the notion of one Clemson, a united Clemson, and how strong we could be when we're united. I remember thinking of that notion of one Clemson sitting in a stadium when I was dean on a really clear October day. We were playing North Carolina, and the stadium was full. And the game hadn't started, and I looked around and I said, if you could ever get this many people, 90,000 people going in the same direction, you really have something. And that's what we set out to do. And I think if we've had some success in terms of our academic rankings and in terms of the reputation of the school and the happiness of the students, I think it's a great thing that students are happy and that we have good town-gown relations. And, you want students to be challenged, but I don't think you learn as well in any other state of mind than being happy. And I think that's the best environment for making progress intellectually. So if we've had that success, I'm confident we'll keep that going. And we've been in the top 25 now for 6 consecutive years, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Counting this year, and we're number 21 at this point, and we were within 1/100th of a point of being in the top 20. The way they put those scores together. So we're very close to that goal, and we belong there. We've been there in that category for some time, and it's something I think we can all take great pride in. And I think what it says is United Clemson is unstoppable.
Right, and
United Clemson is unstoppable.
talk a little bit about when you came to Clemson. It had like 5 different presidents, and I think 15 or 16 years. You wanted to bring some stability because you obviously care about this place a lot. And talk about some of the things that, you know, like the Automotive Center and the Clemson at the Falls. Some of the things that, and obviously the number, I guess, 22-21 ranking that the goal you set when you came in. If you could just expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think the success, if we've had it, has been as a result of that, as I said, that united effort. But it applies in all directions. I mean, the work we've done at CU ICAR or at Curie in Charleston, or any of our efforts off campus is the natural evolution of a land-grant school reaching out into the communities, but doing it in a 21st century way, not just focused on agriculture and forestry, but on the engineering and science as well. And we're doing that, and we're creating jobs. I mean, it would be foolish for us to graduate really bright people like you all and not have jobs for them when you finish. So we had to do both things. We had to, well, in Thomas Green Clemson's will said you got to do both things. It says in the will you should be a high seminary of learning, which is about the intellectual part of what we do, but we're also responsible for the prosperity of the state of South Carolina. So we got to create the jobs and then create the people to fill the jobs, the way I look at it. And so we set about doing that, and I think we've had some success at doing that, and I'm really encouraged about how much progress CU ICAR's made. And Curie's grand opening this past fall was an amazing event with some great success stories around it, both individual people as well as the impact on South Carolina. And I think clearly what we're doing is what Thomas Green Clemson charged us to do in his will, and it's just bearing the fruits in the 21st century.
I think we're about to take a break here.
President Barker, if you'll stay with us one more segment here, if you don't mind, on this afternoon, and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about, I guess, you know, athletics, academics, and what are the plans in retirement and moving back to the architecture faculty. So we're going to, Michael's going to read a couple quotes here. We're going to play a little James Taylor for you, and we'll come back on WSBF FM Clemson. So Clemson Sports Team President James Barker is here.